The Minotaur, the inner labyrinth of the human soul. There is something eternal in the image of the Minotaur, something that stares back at us from the shadows of myth to the mirrors of modernity. He is not merely a being imprisoned in a labyrinth. He is the labyrinth itself, alive, pulsating, reflecting the winding paths of the human soul. A bull's head, a man's body, an incarnate paradox. He reminds us, with his grotesque existence, of the incessant battle between our roaring instincts and the reason that tries to tame them. The Minotaur is not just a creature of the past. He is the archetype of the imbalance we carry. He represents our unresolved choices, our unconfessed desires, and our truths buried under layers of rationalization. He is, in essence, the echo of a humanity that, by despising its own lucidity, surrenders to inner chaos. In modern labyrinths, digital, emotional, social, the Minotaur hides at every crossroads. He is the dehumanization that arises when we neglect the spirit and become prisoners of the superficial. He is the mute cry of a world that, in its eagerness to possess everything, forgets to possess itself. Yet the myth is not just a warning, but a promise. For inside every labyrinth there is a thread, and inside each of us an Ariadne waiting to be heard. The essence of the Minotaur, by challenging us, invites us to transcendence. He is the shadow that reveals the light. He is the chaos that begs for order. He is paradoxically the reminder that even in the deepest of our abysses, there is a path to freedom. The Minotaur is a psychological and philosophical symbol. The anti-human and the internal dilemma. The Minotaur, with the body of a man and the head of a bull, embodies the struggle between reason and instinct, a battle that defines the human condition. Philosophically, it represents imbalance, the submission of the mind to the body, of reason to irrational passions. Psychologically, it is the archetype of what man fears becoming when he abandons lucidity and lets himself be dominated by the most primitive instincts. The critique of modern society. In contemporary times, the Minotaur reflects a civilization obsessed with the physical and the superficial. The cult of perfect bodies, shaped in gyms, often neglects intellectual and emotional development. This inversion of priorities transforms us into beings with imposing bodies, but heads devoid of lucidity, the exact parallel of the Minotaur. The labyrinth as a metaphor for existence. The labyrinth symbolizes the challenges and confusions of life, where we get lost without a clear purpose. Overcoming the labyrinth is not just about finding the exit, but discovering the meaning. Thus, Ariadne's thread becomes a metaphor for self-knowledge and the ethical values that guide us back to balance. The origin of the Minotaur and its ethical lessons. Ingratitude and its consequences. The myth is born from the ingratitude of Minos, who by disobeying Poseidon violates a sacred pact. This breach of trust demonstrates that unethical actions generate disorder and disastrous consequences. In the human context, the myth warns about the price of dishonesty and disconnection from moral values. The perversion of instincts. The grotesque union between Pasiphaë and the bull, which generates the Minotaur, symbolizes the degeneration of uncontrolled desires. Freud and Jung could interpret it as the manifestation of repressed instincts that, when released without direction, produce destruction. The birth of the Minotaur warns of the importance of the conscious mastery of passions. The Minotaur as a devourer of wisdom. The Minotaur devours the most promising youths of Athens, representing destructive forces that stifle the intellectual and ethical growth of society. He is the personification of the waste of human potential, a warning against systems and structures that prioritize control and destruction over the promotion of wisdom. Wisdom versus knowledge. The need for lucidity. The myth differentiates the simple accumulation of information from true wisdom, which is guided by ethics and reflection. In the modern era, the Minotaur is the symbol of the distractions that confuse knowledge with data, moving us away from a deep understanding of existence. The danger of superficiality. In digital society, the search for instant information often replaces reflection. The myth criticizes this superficiality, which translates into mental confusion and alienation, a state analogous to the inner labyrinth. The mentioned chronic stupidity is the inability to transform data into real wisdom. Lucidity as human essence. Lucidity is the light that guides us in the labyrinth of life. It is what differentiates us from the Minotaur, as it allows us to overcome chaos and the destructive forces that threaten humanity. Losing lucidity is to abdicate our human essence and become a prisoner of disordered instincts. The figure of Ariadne and the thread of life. Guides and allies on the journey. Ariadne symbolizes the importance of meaningful connections. The thread she offers to Theseus is not just a practical tool, but an act of trust and support. In psychological terms, it is the manifestation of the external help we need to face our inner monsters. The thread of life as a guiding principle. The thread represents ethical principles and values that keep us connected to a greater purpose, even in the most confusing phases of life. It is the anchor that prevents us from being consumed by the chaos and disorder of the existential labyrinth. Contemporary reflection. The critique of digital society. The excess of information in the internet age creates a mental labyrinth where clarity and wisdom are lost. A society that prioritizes the volume of data over the depth of understanding. Modernity in this context is a new Minotaur devouring lucidity and humanity. The challenge of the 21st century. The main challenge today is to preserve wisdom in a world of constant distractions and superficialities. This requires a conscious effort to overcome the modern Minotaurs: consumerism, selfishness, and alienation. Lucidity and purpose are the weapons to confront them. The path to wisdom. The overcoming of the Minotaur, both internal and external, is a journey of self-knowledge, ethics, and connection with purpose. The labyrinth is not just a place of perdition, but a learning field where ARIADNE'S thread our values and meaningful connections guides us. The myth of the Minotaur invites us to reevaluate the values of contemporary society. Body, mind, and spirit must coexist in harmony, for the supremacy of anyone over the others dehumanizes us. Balance is the key to transcendence. The myth, therefore, transcends its ancient narrative and becomes a tool for understanding the human condition in its complexity and the challenges of modernity. The labyrinth is within each one of us, but so is the thread.